your insulin is going up, you're basically putting on body fat. Every time your insulin is down, you're losing weight. And that's because insulin is your fat storage hormone.
Insulin does increase the storage of macronutrients after a meal. But what else does insulin do? On the fat cells, insulin increases the uptake of fatty acids and glucose in order to create triglycerides, which is the way that fat is stored inside of fat cells. It also inhibits lipolysis, which is the release of fatty acids. Insulin also increases the uptake of circulating glucose by virtually every organ, including the liver, the muscles, the fat tissue, the heart, the kidneys, the brain, and it increases the synthesis of glycogen, which is the way that glucose is stored within the muscles and the liver. In addition, it inhibits glycogenolysis, which is the breakdown of stored glycogen, because you wouldn't want to be synthesizing it and breaking it down at the same time. Insulin also increases the uptake of amino acids in the muscle, and an increase in muscle protein synthesis, which is the creation of new muscle proteins. In addition, it inhibits proteolysis, which is the breakdown of body proteins, which is one of the mechanisms by which insulin can actually increase muscle growth. Another way is by directly stimulating an intracellular protein called mTOR, which inhibits protein breakdown and increases muscle protein synthesis. So on the muscle and the fat tissue, insulin is anabolic, growing fat tissue and muscle tissue. Insulin also acts on the kidneys to increase sodium reabsorption, when we already have a high degree of circulating glucose. Lucky for us, this can actually spare amino acids for muscle growth, rather than these amino acids being turned into glucose. Insulin also inhibits gluconeogenesis because insulin is raised in response to dietary glucose, and we would not want to create more glucose, which is one of the reasons those with diabetes have an increase in urination, because their kidneys have become resistant to insulin. Therefore, they are no longer getting the signal at the level of the kidneys to increase sodium and fluid reabsorption. Unbeknownst to many, insulin also decreases our appetite. It does this by binding to and activating specific neurons in the brain that are considered anorexogenic neurons because they decrease our appetite. It also directly stimulates the synthesis and release of leptin, a molecule with the primary role of suppressing appetite. Leptin also increases energy expenditure and thermogenesis, which is why we do believe that insulin is actually the mediator of feeding-related thermogenesis, meaning without an insulin response to a meal, your energy expenditure might not increase after the ingestion of carbohydrates, and this increase in energy expenditure is referred to as diet-induced thermogenesis. Insulin is also very important for packaging up triglycerides and cholesterol into lipoproteins so they can be shipped around the body so dietary fat and dietary cholesterol can make it to their target cells. And it does this by increasing the formation of very low-density lipoproteins, which have the most amount of triglycerides, and increasing the production of cholesterol by stimulating the rate-limiting enzyme HMG-CoA reductase. And it's actually thought that those with higher insulin sensitivity have less atherogenic lipoprotein particles, meaning less likely to cause atherosclerosis. Insulin within the brain is actually also extremely important, as it can increase the glucose uptake within the brain. Interestingly, insulin can be synthesized in the brain and can enter the brain from the bloodstream. And insulin in the brain contributes to the control of nutrient homeostasis, reproduction, cognition, and memory, as well as being an all-around neuroprotective molecule, which is why the resistance to insulin in type 2 diabetes is very strongly associated with Alzheimer's disease. There are also insulin receptors on the heart and the vascular system, in which insulin does appear to improve the function of the heart, increase vasodilation, which is the relaxation of the blood vessels, and increase blood flow. And as these authors mentioned, all of these are impaired during insulin resistance. Insulin can even regulate the immune system by stimulating T-cell immunity during inflammation and infection, thus giving us a stronger immune system, and acting as an anti-inflammatory agent, and being extremely important for the immune cell differentiation and development, which is likely why diabetics have impaired immune functions and an increased risk of infections. There is thought that insulin may even increase protein synthesis within the small intestine, contributing to the strength of the intestinal tract. There are other, much less understood effects of insulin, but these are the main effects and probably some effects that you may not have even known. And it does appear that insulin resistance is likely a much more detrimental thing than being sensitive to insulin, even if it does increase fat storage. As you can see, there are actually many beneficial properties of insulin, And chronically suppressing insulin may actually have some negative side effects, such as increasing electrolyte loss in the urine, and possibly being detrimental for the maintenance and growth of muscle. Additionally, the idea that insulin is the only way that we can store fat is flawed, because we have lipoproteins that circulate in our bloodstream and carry fat to all of our fat cells. And this fat can be deposited within the fat cells completely in the absence of insulin. So if you eat a caloric surplus consisting of dietary fat, that excess fat will still be stored in the fat cells, regardless of whether or not your insulin did or did not raise. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed, and if you would like an individualized approach to nutrition and lifestyle to optimize your health, energy, and body composition, send me a DM to sign up for coaching.